I welcome those of you who are watching our Unity of Monroe YouTube channel, and thank you for tuning in whenever you're tuning in. And for those of you who are here today, God bless you. Thank you for coming out. I appreciate you very much on this Sunday. We all know, of course, last Sunday was Mother's Day, and I kind of tied today's lesson in with a little bit of what I talked about on Mother's Day as well. And as wanting for us to do on Mother's Day, to start thinking about people who are important in our lives as we did last week. And I was thinking about my mother, and my mother always liked to use, certain phrases and words. And one of the words that she liked to use was the word kibosh, or however you pronounce it. My mom always said kibosh. And she used this word, and it's not a word that we probably use very often. So when you think about it, when you think about what that word means, my mom knew what the word meant because she used it properly. It means to do something, to decisively end something, or to reject something, to put a kibosh on it. So my mom would say something like, "You better put a kibosh on that attitude, young man." So I knew I was in trouble if she said that to me. Put a kibosh on it. But we're called to not put a kibosh, or don't put a kibosh on our creative process, our creative soul, our own creativity. The word creativity, or the word create, ties in again with what I talked about last week with Mother's Day, because the word create means to beget something. It means to give birth to something. So creativity is really about giving birth to ideas and thoughts. Like in a small town newspaper office where they were perplexed with how they were going to write a headline for a woman who had just passed away. And she was noted for very little other than the fact she loved crossword puzzles. So how are you going to write a headline to announce this woman's passing? And that's all she was known for, was crossword puzzles. So the editor kind of whines about it. He says, "What am I supposed to write? What am I supposed to say? She liked puzzles?" Then all of a sudden, one of the young copy editors, in a moment of, shall we say, creative inspiration, popped in and said, "How about crossword fan is now 6 down?" Now that's creative thinking, although, maybe applied in a little different and macabre way, perhaps. But sometimes it takes a kind of a creative twist of mind and thoughts and ideas to come up with the right solution, or the right way to look at something, or the right way to live a more exciting and fulfilling and sustaining life experience. So this idea of creativity is recognizing that you and I were all part of this creative process. So we have to say to ourselves, I am creative. I am birthing something into experience. What does that mean to you? To just ponder that declaration, that affirmation. I am creative. I am creative in everything I think, say, and do, because you and I are co-creators with God. And we apply those into our life experience. It's the product of what we think and say and do according to our actions and our behaviors. While we may associate the word creative probably more with people who are artistic, or somebody who plays an instrument or sings, or we may think of it in terms of, say, for instance, someone who invents something, whatever it may be. But to be creative is something that is always part of life. Everything is creative. And we don't put a kibosh on creativity, because creativity is in every word, every thought, every step that we can take. Every step that we can think of in our life experience. In Unity, we teach, of course, what is known as the 5 principles. We won't go through all 5 of them, but these are guidelines. These are kind of jumping off points in our spiritual journey. It's not the end or the be-all and say-all of what Unity teaches, but it is a framework of 5 basic principles. And number 3 is very important to remember, that we create our experiences by how we look at things, choose things, how we think on things, how we think in creative terms and creative aspect. So invite yourself in this moment, right now, to think about your week the week that just passed. Something that came up in your life, a thought, a word, an idea. Maybe it was something where you had a disagreement with somebody. It was something that was kind of a negative feel. Maybe it was a thought that you held about yourself, your physical nature or body or whatever it may happen to have been. Maybe it was about a friend or a loved one where you didn't necessarily see them in the light you wanted to see. So think about that for a moment, and now think about how you change the creative flow, as I talked about in the Daily Word today, the creative flow as you understand how you change that kind of perspective. You look at it from that different vantage point, from the creative mind that you have to create something new, something bold, something life-affirming that says, oh, I see this person in a different light. I see myself as healthy, hearty, and whole. I see that person I had a disagreement with in a more appreciative light. Now, that doesn't necessarily mean that it's going to change the situation overnight, or maybe it won't change it at all. But guess what, friends? It changes how we look at things and what our perspective is, and the recognition that, yeah, I am co-creating something. What am I co-creating? A new life experience, a new thought energy. The power of the creative mind is always at work, every single moment, when we factor in who we are, our heart, our consciousness. I remember reading a study many years back that talked about the power of creativity. And we all know that probably when we were kids and younger, maybe teenagers and young adults, if someone would come up to us and say, hey, you, Jack, or Marianne, do you think of yourself as a creative person? You'd probably say, yeah. Because most people back then, not just back in the time, but at a certain age, really believe they're creative. What happens when we become middle-aged and beyond? Usually about 10% believe they're creative. It's just not true. It's just that we own that statement or that idea of creativity, and we kind of apply it to other people. Oh, he's creative because he can draw. She's creative because she can, accomplish something, or she's athletic of, a person in some way, shape, or form. And so we get into that kind of framework, or we kind of, disavow our own ability to create, to mold our life experience. So we kind of lose our faith in our ability to be creative. Now, I'm not talking about going out and sculpting something necessarily, but creativity is in the next best idea or thought you have, whatever it is. It could be as simple as being creative in creating a meal, or being creative in making a decision like, I'm going to go here or go there. So creativity is in everything that we think, say, and do. So we kind of lose our faith in that higher power because we've lost our faith in the power of our creative spirit. And many mystics will say that when you cancel out your creative self, your creative soul, when you cancel that out, you cancel out that connection and oneness and the power that you have in God and with God, and understanding that. So the next great creative thing that is in you and me is that next great creative thought, whatever it is, because you are always creating something in your life experience. You're always creating something anew. Eric Butterworth, longtime Unity minister and author, wrote, thought is a creative process. You can become a creative thinker instead of a reactive thinker. Something happens and we react to it, and we become frightened or we become concerned about something. So we're not a reactive thinker, we're a creative thinking. And it is your mind, and you can think what you want to think. You can think as you wish according to your consciousness. And this is what Butterworth talked about, this idea of how we can approach life. I had a friend who always would say, I call them like I see them. You've heard that phrase before, I call them like I see them. Well, I understand that. But I always would quiz him and say, well, you call them like you see them, but what are you seeing them from? What's your perspective? And if he would have a perspective, which he did quite often, of seeing the world in unkind ways, hurtful ways, he called them like he saw them. Yeah, he saw that. Because he was drawing that into his life experience according to, as we teach that third principle, the things that you hold on to. We all face challenges and experiences, do we not? Where we have to make those choices and decisions. We have to find what is creative in our life. We have to find what we might call our finest hour when we are overcoming whatever it is that we have to overcome, whatever challenge it may be. I recently read a great book called The Splendid and the Vile, and it's by Eric Larson. Some of you may be familiar with his work in some of the other works that he's done. And he wrote this book, The Splendid and the Vile, and it focuses in on one particular year, the first year of the prime ministership of Winston Churchill at the beginning of the Second World War. It's a very interesting book because it covers just that small portion. But Winston Churchill made that declaration early on after France had fallen and some other countries had fallen. Early on, he made that declaration, said to the people of the United Kingdom, of Great Britain, of the whole empire, he said to them, "This will be your finest hour." This was their finest hour. He said, "We will say that once we get over this particular hump." And it was true. This will be and was their finest hour. When you think about some of those finest hours you've come through, some of those difficult experiences, it came about because of the creative mind that you are, the creative mindset that you bring forth. There's a wonderful poem, if you will, or piece of prose by William Ernest Henley entitled Invictus. And he wrote this particular passage from the pain of his suffering that he was going through of an incurable ailment, where he said, "I am the master of my fate. I am the captain of my soul." Just think about how you can use that as an affirmation, an idea. I am the master of who I am, my fate. How? Why? Because I'm creative. I'm the captain of my soul because there's a creative process. We have the power of the creative mind, oneness with spirit, oneness with God. So even in the midst of all of that, we find that sense of creativity of who we are. Something that is brought forth out of what it seems like nothingness, and yet it's always there within ourselves. If you read the first chapter or two of the book of Genesis, if you read that very early on, the author or authors, because it probably was authors of that whole book, because there's many threads and many different weavings of stories and tales that were being told. So the authors of that particular book were always talking about how God created. How does God create? The same way we create the same way God creates. As it says in the early part of Genesis, let there be light. What's the operative word there? The word is let. Just like in your creative mind, in your creative process, it's a matter of letting. What am I going to let take place right now? That's creativity, friends. That's being a creative soul. To let it happen as it happens through you because it's always there. That's the operative word, coming through you and as you, that wellspring of creativity that is never exhausted unless we're the ones that put the kibosh on it, right, Jonelle? We don't put the kibosh on our creativity because it is always present. And so we simply we invoke that sense of what letting means. Now, I say this because each and every one of us has a calling, if you will, to do this. Why do I say that you have a calling to do this? To find your creative source, to connect with that creative mind, to allow it to expand even more. Because if you check your pulse, right here or here, and if you have a pulse, you have a purpose. I've said that before. You have a pulse, you have a purpose. What is my purpose today? Is to be more creative in choices I make. What am I being creative with? Creative toward new solutions, creative toward inspiration, creative toward ideas that sustain me and others, creative toward being life affirming. All of that's part of creativity, my friends. The creative being that we are. There are many dreams that we have stuffed down, unfortunately, not just us, but others. Those creative dreams where we put the kibosh, shall we say, on creativity. But let's remember that whatever it is we're desiring this day, yes, I have a pulse, I have a purpose, I have a need to be creative. Again, that idea of creativity, the idea to create something comes out of that birthing process, the birth of our thoughts and ideas. To affirm and know for ourselves, I am creative, is a bold declaration and step toward something greater, toward those dreams, those visions, those passions that we might have. So in our time of thinking about being creative, connecting with our creative mind, may each and every one of us find that deep peace of creation flowing in our spirit through us. May our senses awaken to what? The creative spark that's in you, that lives in you. And may you walk in beauty and wonder and seek to create beauty wherever it is you are, in every thought. And may you take the risk of discovering or go beyond where you are right now, to elevate, to ascend, if you will, to a higher perspective of the divine within and around you. And may this life bless and keep you and find that creative process as you affirm and know that with God, yes, I live a creative life. I live a creative experience. Now, let's just take a moment to settle in on that power and process and presence of creativity. And I invite you to just close your eyes and to begin this journey with me on what it means to be a creative being, a creative soul. And to just sit back in that place and space, that chair that comfortably supports you, and placing your hands by your side or there in your lap. Closing your eyes and being aware as you breathe in. You breathe the very essence of what life is, which is creativity. Life is a creative process. And I choose in this moment to begin to accelerate, to move into a fuller and richer expression of my creativity. Taking a moment just to breathe in once again and to let that go. I know that the power of creativity comes forth as I let that imprisoned splendor of life and creativity to do its wonderful work within. Today it is my choice, my vision, my declaration to affirm and know that I am a creative soul. I am a creative being in and through the power and presence of Spirit. I listen with love and attentiveness to all that is before me this day. And I choose to get in touch with my creative mind, my creative heart. For all of this goes forth to do its perfect work. Whatever it is I may be focused on, whatever my attention is, my purpose this day is to be more attentive to my creative side, my creative nature. What might I be focused upon this day and in this moment? A particular challenge or difficulty, thought or idea, a problem to work out, all comes forth into greater clarity and focus when I own and live from that creative mindset. I am creative. I am now bringing forth and birthing into life a new vision, a new thought, a new possibility. I take this moment to just sit in this awareness, this bountiful, beautiful, present moment of wonder and insight where I affirm and know I am creative. I am a creative soul. And as I observe whatever may be before me this day, this moment, this week, I know the power of creativity goes forth to do its perfect work of insight and awareness and understanding. So I invite myself right now to just rest easy in the power of the creative mind that works forth and does its miraculous work. I am creative. As I take this moment to just sit in the silence and the quiet as I listen and listen to that quiet voice in the silence. In this moment of genius, I affirm and declare that sense of purpose, that sense of knowing that no matter what is before me this day, I am creative. And so creativity is a birth process. It is an abundant experience of bringing forth new life, new energy. I go forth in this moment, knowing that with God I am creative. And so I give thanks. Thank you, loving presence, for that power to create this day. And so it is. Amen.